Okay. So my name's Chris, as Darren said. I've been working for Intuit for about 5 years off and on now. And I'm a recent addition to the development team of SnapTax. So anyways, I'll first talk about SnapTax history. There's a bit of a video I'll show that kind of explains how SnapTax kind of came to be and some of the development processes that we use. And then I'll go into how it was built, and I'll go into a high-level view of the architecture that we use for SnapTax, and kind of finishing off with some other tools that you can use for mobile development and the future, and any questions after that. So let me first start this app off for you guys, or start this video.
An idea to capture documents from a consumer through their phone, have them just take a picture. Our initial idea was those documents would then be pushed over to TurboTax. The consumer would then sign in on TurboTax and complete their return because the data was already populated. What we discovered out in the field is people were using their phones, but what was happening is with these smartphones, they were seeing them as mini computers. And so they were doing more things with these mini computers. And so that's when we kind of stepped back and said, hey, let's do it all. Let's do start to finish taxes on the phone.
We wanted to ensure that we gave customers an immediate wow. This is an app that they're going to use once a year for 15 minutes. We went to them, we followed them to their homes, we followed them to Starbucks.
We took out sheets of paper with concept, with flow on it, and we'd ask them what did they think of this experience. And it was really interesting because most customers initially kind of didn't get it. They didn't believe you can actually take a picture of a W-2 or any kind of document and translate that information.
Mir came to our team and gave us a challenge, basically said, hey, do you think in 3 weeks' time we could actually get this working on an iPhone?
When we took a prototype out to a customer, showed them, and they actually got to interact with it, see how they could simply take a picture and the W-2 information translated automatically. That was quite honestly the moment we knew we were onto something. We had reinvented taxes.
Just doing your taxes on a phone is a whole new innovation, a whole new way of doing taxes, and it brings with it a whole new dimension to how do you ask questions on a phone, and how do you make it very easy?
We started out with that prototype, and that was just the core functionality. Okay, we proved we can take a picture of a W-2 and get the results back. Of course, then now the real challenge is, okay, well, start to finish taxes is a much bigger deal. Right? There's a lot more to that.
All right, everyone. So what we want to do is just go over.
At one point, we were iterating every week. We would actually take a prototype, we'd show it to customers. We'd usually have multiple versions to get their feedback. That through that iteration, we were able to augment the experience on the phone, and it made sense to them.
Because we are very customer focused, we do a lot of usability design studies. This brings in a lot of focus on what you're doing. So when you're actually testing the product and you're thinking about scenarios, you know who your customer is, and that is very important.
There's a lot of expertise here. There's a lot of resources, people with knowledge, and software that you can tap into.
We would build these central web services that the iPhone would communicate with, and then these central web services would talk to all our various services that Intuit had. What made that really great is we could now scale this very easily to other platforms.
Mobile is completely new, but it builds upon a lot of the same foundations of computer science. Our goal was to deliver SnapTax on both Android and iPhone. While there's new challenges, it's really exciting to be able to use tricks of the trade that you know, but then how do you make it native for each platform? How do you honor the look and feel, the interactions of each platform?
We wanted to give an Android customer an Android experience. And we also looked at the native apps that are built by Apple, and we used that as the basis for how we built our questions.
You're day-to-day working with designers, product managers, developers, quality engineers, and the tax domain experts. Working with people from different disciplines is a lot more interesting, and you learn a lot more.
One of the very cool things about Intuit's environment is that it gives you the freedom to innovate, the freedom to go after some of these ideas and explore them.
SnapTax has been has been really rewarding. It's been a challenge, but it's also been so satisfying to see, especially last year when we released the product and actually seeing it go into the customer's hands. That's really exciting. This has been the most fun out of any project I worked on, not just at Intuit, but as an engineer.
Oops. So it kind of gives you an idea of what SnapTax is. So let me just get back to. So that video was actually made in 2011. So it was pretty recent video from when the SnapTax app was created. So some of the UI has been updated, but it's kind of gives you kind of an idea of how it was created and what it does. So. And this is kind of history outline of it. So originally it was built to just take W-2s in the US, which is similar to the T4s in Canada. And it was only released in California. And that first release was actually pretty successful. So I unfortunately don't have the metrics for it, but it had a fair amount of downloads, somewhere in the tens of thousands. And then in 2010, they released it to all of the US. And they also released an Android version, which they released at the same time. And added some extra slips, and again, the amount of downloads that they had in California was similar to every other state out there, so it was downloaded quite a bit in its second year out there, and Intuit, I think, made some pretty good cash. And in 2011 is actually when we brought it up, 2012, the tax year 2011 was when we brought it up to Canada. And it was an interesting development from what I understand. I wasn't a part of the team during that time, but we brought it up in October and we released it in January. So it was a rapid development. And so what we had to do is we had to take the US code base and we forked it. We basically took a spawn of it and we started developing on this spawn. So then US had their own code base and we now had our own code base. And then we modified it as quickly as we could to do, just T4s initially. And then we put it out to the public and just kind of to determine what kind of download, how many customers would want to do this in Canada. And again, it was very successful in Canada. Quickly afterwards, we added an RSP to it, and then that was our last release for tax year 2011. For tax year 2012, it wasn't as quite dramatic in Canada. We added iPad support, which is basically, it's pretty much all the same code, except there's some slight differences in UI, and we had to code that in. And as a side note with the iPad support, which we found out when we were upgrading to iOS 7, is once you put iPad support in your product, you cannot take it out. The App Store, Apple will not allow you to take this out unless you release it under a different app ID, and So that was kind of a shocker while we were upgrading our app to iOS 7. But we managed to get through it. And then this last year, it was just pretty simple rollover, added some new slips. And the US, we helped the US with their localization. They wanted to release it for Spanish as well. There's a huge Spanish population down there. And so we helped them out with that because up in Canada, we have our French localization that we have to deal with a lot of our products. So we were the experts on this subject. And so initially we just developed for the iOS. And so when we first released this was in 2009, tax year 2009. So we started development in 2009. At that time, iOS pretty much had a lot of the market share for something for a mobile OS where you could actually make money off of it as a developer. I think there was also Symbian, which had a huge market share, but I don't think they didn't have a really large development platform that you could sell your apps off. So iOS was kind of the ideal choice for us, and it had the App Store as well. So Android was coming up, but it still wasn't. It didn't have the market penetration like the iOS platform did, so we pretty much strictly went with iOS in that year. So this is pretty much the meat from a high-level overview of what SnapTax is. It's basically split out into kind of two components in a way. So one is the iOS, where we build natively for SnapTax, and it really only houses like visual displays, some data management, some code that's needed for quick processing on the phone. And then a lot of the other meat of the product is out in the cloud. And the way that we do this is using what's called a service gateway. So what a service gateway does is it's basically like an orchestration layer. So whenever I want to make a request to some service out there in the cloud, I say, service gateway, do this for me and send it off to this person. And basically SnapTax will just send it to service gateway, then service gateway will transform, will do everything that's needed, and it will supply it to the service in question that you want that information. So take, for example, OCR, where we just need to provide it with a photo. We send it to the OCR service gateway. It can take the photo. It does what it needs to do in order to pass it to the service provider or OCR. It can do some fallback, so it can retry. So the SnapTax version doesn't have to worry about retrying it, constantly doing the fallbacks. It doesn't have to worry about error processing. It can just send it to the service gateway. The service gateway can take whatever image. It could potentially even transform the image into, from PNG to JPEG or whatever, and it sends it to the OCR service. Similarly, we have a bunch of different services out there. One is printing. So basically, when you're done your return, you print it out. You can send it to CRA, or you keep one. Hopefully, you keep one for your records, and that's done with a specific service that is actually not only used by SnapTax, but it's used by TurboTax Online. And a lot of these services in this architecture, basically, it helps facilitate reuse between all different apps. So what we want to do is create, instead of siloing our projects and saying, okay, I'm going to create, in SnapTax, we're going to create our own OCR stuff. And TTO Online, if they have their OCR stuff, they're going to create their own. What you can do is just expose this service in the cloud, and then obviously take use of it. So this is they made note of that in the video, and this is how we try and keep code reuse to a high, at the same time giving our customers what we wanted, which was a native look and feel and a really snappy display. So what else about this? So most of the services, most of the meat of the program, like I said, was in there. Tax calculations was a big one. We send all of our tax calculations to a tax calculation service, and basically we send portions of your pre-bill while you're doing your SnapTax. It sends portions of it that need to be calculated. And interestingly, the service that does the calculations also does the calculations for TurboTax Online. And so if we were to ever want to expand SnapTax, all the calculation backend is already there available for us. We just need to update the display and possibly update the service gateway to manage some of the back and forth. So when I say service gateway, there is actually a service gateway architecture, and it's mainly built off of what's called an enterprise service bus, which is an ESB. And it's, you can get ESBs come in the form of like Mule or WebSphere or whatever. And they're just a good way of facilitating that communication between, the service provider and the service consumer. So we don't necessarily, through our refactoring process, which we're going to be doing, we don't have a true service gateway, but it is a man-in-the-middle service that we keep pinging, and it facilitates all the communication between everything else. So that is pretty much the meat of it. So again, this is an enterprise application, so it's been out there for a while, and we've had the resources to kind of build this. And coming from some of the other presentations, which were very much startup, which were very much kind of like, hey, we want to get the minimum viable product out there as fast as possible. I'm not sure if this would work. Having said that, if you have all these services out there already that you can take advantage of, then you can, like the Google Maps, then you can quickly iterate and add a lot of functionality quickly. So this is pretty much SnapTax. So again, I kind of went over this already. the why we built it this way. The service gateway provides simplicity of programs connecting with service providers and so on. So we also, again, like, we wanted to provide that really native, rich experience on Android and iOS, which is what we currently have right now. We really wanted it to be Android specific and iOS specific, which is why we programmed natively all the interfaces. So, but over the years, we've kind of fragmented our development process. We have two separate iOS code bases, one for Canada and one for the US. And we also have a separate code base for Android. And in fact, the portion of the company that's developing Android is actually quite separate from the portion of the company that's developing the US iOS portion. So we're kind of in a bit of an interesting phase here. And so this is, going into our next slide. It's kind of what's the future of SnapTax, and it's really trying to consolidate all of our services and kind of make stuff unified. And hopefully at that point, whatever changes the US does, Canada will be able to take advantage of. Whatever changes, this other portion of the corporation, Android, will, we can quickly mitigate it to the iOS portion. So, and we want to move to a true service gateway in ESB. And better OCR, obviously. It's a little bit ironic because we built this originally because we wanted to take pictures of our tax return. However, the success rates right now are probably around 80%. So there's always a need for you to go into your tax return and just make sure that it copied it correctly. But it's an interesting technology and one that's been improving a lot over the years. So, and yeah, my last slide is one of the last slides is just kind of introducing some different UIs, some different cross-platform development tools. I won't go into them too much, but most of them run off of, if they share UI between cross-platforms, it's normally like a web page, an embedded web page. So you take a web browser, embed it into your phone, and then you run JavaScript, HTML5, CSS. For some of them, like Xamarin, which is interesting, it's a native code runner. So basically compile it for each platform specifically. But unlike some of the phone gap, which is you're sharing UI across, you just can't do that with Xamarin. Xamarin being expensive. PhoneGap, I believe, is free and open source, which is kind of interesting. Trying to get my... Yeah, and that's pretty much it for some of these. I haven't actually used a lot of these. I just wanted to kind of introduce them, just to kind of make you aware of them. If we were to have to do SnapTax again, there's actually some really great points about Xamarin. We've actually used the tool in Intuit before, and it worked out great. It's expensive, but obviously Intuit being what it is, it can afford a few licenses. But the last slide is really just, if I were to give you advice, it's basically, what do you guys need to build? It's mostly, Intuit's become successful because it's concentrated on the problem as opposed to how do I solve the problem? How do I solve the problem in the technology space? It always first goes towards the problem. Once you define the problem really clearly, it almost it's easy to make it's easy to choose which solution you want to use. So, and all solutions, they vary depending on what problem space you're trying to solve. So if my advice is just, make sure you know what the problem is first. And then most of the time you'll know how to solve it and what technologies to use. So, and again, SnapTax, it's got a lot of resources backing up. So we can afford to build natively for each, portion of whatever mobile space we want to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So.
Thanks, Chris. So maybe we'll take a couple questions if there are any.
Just curiosity, is SnapTax works like an extension to TurboTax, or is it just a standalone application?
It is a standalone application. We use it in combination with with TurboTax. So what we found with SnapTax, we have a lot of customers that actually just kind of casually just download SnapTax during tax season and kind of play around with it and kind of see what it's all about. Your average, your student, I call them student users that basically, go to university, have some RSPs maybe they have a T4, they have some student loans. They're kind of the audience that uses it because they use their phones for so much. But what happens is while they're using it, some of them will get disqualified in SnapTax just because it can't handle their tax situation. So what happens is SnapTax will say, let's copy all of your data to TurboTax and we'll forward you to the website, and it'll pre-populate your return as of what you have in SnapTax. So that's it kind of marriages them both together, and it's really just kind of a portal to get a lot of mobile users to start using TurboTax.
Marketing strategy you use for selling it? Is it just a flat fee? Are you looking for a premium on more features you use?
We only have one SnapTax. It's pretty. It doesn't do a lot. But what we do is for every return that you file on SnapTax, we used to charge $9.99. And so it's integrated with CRA so you can net file with one click on SnapTax, and you're done. As of I think a month and a half ago, what we did, we wanted to try and increase the usage of customers into SnapTax. So what we did was we made filing your returns on SnapTax free. So if you were a customer that, you could have made $200,000, only had the T4, you could file for free. So what we wanted to get with that is most customers out there will not be able to use SnapTax again because they'll be disqualified. So what happens is they get transferred right away to TurboTax, and then, it's a really easy transition, which helps customers get onto SnapTax, which is where they're going to have to pay money. With regards to how do we get our product out there, it's actually, I think every year we've been pretty lucky. Every year around this time, SnapTax has always been the #1 app in the App Store. So if you go to the financial section, it'll always be the #1 app, along with Mint and some other apps. But that's mainly, and word of mouth.
Are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? Are you taking existing web clients into your SnapTax and vice versa? Have you done that kind of marketing research?
So just to see if I understood your question, so are we taking customers from PayPal or?
From your web client.
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I mean, maybe if customers got wind of, this free app that they could just do their T4s and maybe RSPs or whatever, they might do it. But what we find with taxes is customers, they don't like a lot of changes with their, they've been seeing, and it's a really tough market to get new customers, or to expand kind of the market share. Basically, customers, if they've gone with the tax preparer, somebody that'll do their taxes for them, they don't care. They'll pay hundreds of dollars. They'll go with them because they don't want to know about their taxes. And if you have a customer that comes into TurboTax and feels comfortable with it in their online product, and it's simple to use, and they're going to stick with it, is what we've kind of found. So normally what we found is, I think maybe you might have a trickle back from TurboTax or Moneymaker to SnapTax, which is now free, but it's so minimal that it doesn't affect our bottom line. So
I was going to ask you, so you have iOS and Android front-end developers. What all your back-end services build in more on?
Some of them are built in Java. I think some of them are even. Some of them are built in C#. It really some of the services that we consumed. From my point of view, I just consume them. I'm their client, so I don't even know really what they do or how they do it, and it really doesn't matter to me. So I just basically consume their products. So. But I do know that we are using C# for our tax service. I think some Java mixed with some scripting language with the OCR. With our print service, I'm pretty sure that's Java. So yeah, those are kind of those are the kind of languages that we
I
use.
was wondering, because like the spectrum of developers, you have basically almost all languages that have a majority in your company all over the place, right? Because
Yeah, we got a lot of different developers. I mean, even in our desktop product, I think we have JavaScript, HTML, CSS, all the web languages. We got Python, we got C++, we got C#, some C#. I think those are the languages that are kind of compose our desktop product. And our online product, I think it's similar. We have some of the back-end services. It consumes services, so it's basically the services can be built in whatever, and then the main app itself, I think, is built in Java.
You were talking about the service gateway.
Yep.
Is that like a SnapTax service gateway specific to SnapTax?
No, the service gateway is really meant to be, if it's almost meant to be a backbone. So if you were to think of, I'll go back to the slide here.
Like TurboTax would use it too?
Yeah, TurboTax could definitely use it, yeah. And it's really meant to be it's really meant to provide that abstraction layer. And really this is, at this point, SnapTax or the iPhone photo is the consumer client between these providers. Having said that, a provider can easily become a consumer of one of these other services, if it's complex. So, and it would all rely on the service gateway. And that's like the ideal solution. This is the perfect world. So.